is going to be focused directly on players that are new to Battlefield. So, with the launch of Battlefield 4, I am sure that there are a lot of people that have maybe never tried Battlefield and they want to give it a try. So, with this video, I'm going to overview the basics of the game, how to succeed in it, and most importantly, how to have fun. So if you're a new player to the Battlefield franchise, you're probably wondering what the game is all about and what you are going to want to learn how to do. Well, I can tell you right off the bat that your KD is definitely not as important as you think it is. Your kill death ratio, I mean, it's nice to have a good one, but essentially your kill death ratio in Battlefield, most people don't really care what your kill death ratio is. Battlefield 4 and the Battlefield franchise in general is a very objective centric game. So essentially what that means is you play the objective. If you don't, people are going to get upset because that is just the way the game is played. It has always been like that, and I imagine it always will be. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, that sounds kind of lame. I don't want to play the objective just to fend off others' anger. Well, that is not the only reason to play the objective. Playing the objective, well, it helps your team. It is actually a lot of fun because when you play the objectives, you are helping your team, you get a lot of points, and essentially your score is what people look at. They don't even look at your kills and death. You get a really good score, it's a lot of fun, and it's very rewarding, especially if you like to play shooters with friends, like most people do. It is really fun to work as a team to accomplish tasks, rather than just lone wolf, get a good KD, and at the end of the game be like, what's your KD? That's a little bit lame, and essentially that's how most shooters are played, unfortunately. But Battlefield changes that, and it is definitely for the better. So when you do first start playing Battlefield, it can be really easy to get frustrated because you're dying a lot. But say you die a lot, but you're that one guy that arms the bomb. That is infinitely more useful than like getting a lot of kills. If you're just sitting back and killing people, that's not really useful. So I urge you to, it's kind of weird at first, but don't get frustrated if you're dying a lot. Focus on that objective, play that objective, and the skill will come over time. I will guarantee you that. So that's just a little quick look at how the game is played, and it's really important to keep that in mind. Now, as far as what you do in Battlefield, who you are, there are 4 different roles or classes. Now, these classes are Assault, Support, Engineer, and Recon. Now, each of these classes serves its own unique purpose. So first of all, we'll talk about the Assault class. So the Assault class is essentially, as the name implies, your frontline class. They are your frontline assault man, they are the medic, and they can heal their teammates, and they can also revive teammates. So your assault player is kind of like your bread and butter class. They do well in a lot of situations. They have pretty powerful assault rifles. They can heal their enemies, or sorry, they can heal their teammates and themselves, and revive. So as you can imagine, this is a pretty useful class, and a pretty popular class as well. Now, keep in mind, there are no bad choices when picking a class, it is merely personal preference. And at the same time, don't feel like you need to pick a class and stick with it. You can change classes in between deaths all the time. You're gonna end up playing all of them eventually, so don't feel like, say you start with Assault, don't feel you need to play Assault all the time and never try anything else. That is definitely not the case. So, the next class that we will talk about is the Support class. Now, the Support class, as the name also implies, they play a support role, and by doing that, they draw up ammo boxes for their teammates and for themselves. Now, this is really important. You'll actually notice in this clip I do end up running out of ammo, and I end up switching to my pistol, then I use all of that as well. So basically, support is really useful because you can give your teammates and your squad mates ammo. So that's a really important role. Now, as far as their weapons go, they have bigger guns that with bipods generally, so they're really good for locking down a position in Rush, for example. You just set up your bipod on a rock, and they just funnel down at you, and you just take them out and line them up. So that is essentially how the Assault class works, and they have cool gadgets, like they can throw C4, they've got a little airburst, which is kind of like a grenade launcher. They're a pretty cool class, and they're really useful, especially if you plan on playing in a team environment. Now, next up we have the Engineer class. Now, essentially the Engineer class is your vehicle class. They are good at taking out vehicles, and they are good at working with vehicles. Now, when I say working with vehicles, basically what I'm saying is that they can repair vehicles, friendly vehicles, and they can also use that same tool, the repair torch, to damage enemy vehicles. Now, as far as taking out vehicles goes, They have stuff like mines, rocket launchers, RPGs. They have stingers, which can lock onto air units. Essentially, they are like the vehicle class. If you're going to do anything with vehicles, driving them, taking them out, the engineer class is your go-to class. Now, the engineer class is really useful in a team environment because if you have a tank battle, for example, if you have an engineer behind your tank repairing you, you're going to win that fight because you're essentially taking less damage. Now, as far as the weapons for the engineer go, they use PDWs. Now, a PDW stands for Personal Defense Weapon, and they are really good for close quarters combat. Now, I think that's kind of weird just because an engineer, if they're going to be in vehicles and such, they're generally out in the open, so I would probably throw on a carbine. A carbine, if you aren't aware, is a weapon class that is available for every kit. So, if you're good with carbines, that's good because you can use them across all classes. And last but certainly not least, we have the Recon class. Now, the Recon class, short and simple, is your sniping class. Now, sniping in Battlefield it's kind of interesting to say the least, because sniping, like a traditional sniper where you sit back and take people out, is kind of frowned upon by the Battlefield community, because if you're just sitting back like 600 meters off in the hills trying to pull off that insane headshot, you're not helping your team. But with Battlefield 4, they have changed the Recon class to make it a little more viable and a much more team-oriented class, because in the past, Recon was kind of frowned upon just because Recon was generally not very good up close and people were generally far back. And while there definitely were Recon players that did help their team, for the most part, Recon players were a little useless compared to the other classes. But with the release of Battlefield 4, they have made the Recon class more useful. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you jump into the Recon class right away. I would recommend that you maybe jump in with Engineer or something just to learn the game, because the Engineer class gives you a lot of ways to help your team feel useful. I mean, you've got rocket launchers. Who doesn't feel useful with a rocket launcher? But essentially what I'm saying is the Engineer class is a good starter class just because it offers a lot of ways to help your team in ways that are pretty easy. Because, for example, when you're repairing your squad mate, you get points for that. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but in Battlefield you have a squad. It's four or five people. 5 is a full squad. But when you play with your squad and you're helping your teammates, you get lots more points. So that's just one more reason to play the objective, play with your team, and just have fun. It's a lot more fun when you're playing with your teammates, and you get more points for it. So, you know, it's a win-win situation. Now, when you first load up Battlefield 4, you're probably going to wonder, what should I play? Now, first of all, I urge you, resist the temptation to play your first match in Team Deathmatch. Team Deathmatch, it's a really fun game type, I will say that. But as for a new player, it just doesn't really encompass what Battlefield 4 is. It doesn't have that objective sense to it, which I have tried to drill into your mind is a very important aspect of Battlefield 4. So, what should you play at first? Well, one game type that I would probably recommend above the others would be Conquest, just because it's a staple Battlefield game type, and at the same time it's a lot of fun. So, what is Conquest? Conquest is basically similar to Domination from Call of Duty. Essentially, you have 3 to 5 objectives or even more, but basically your goal is to capture those objectives and hold on to them, and at the same time kill the enemy. And you win this by depleting your enemy's tickets to 0, because each team has tickets, and they lose tickets when their team members die, and they also bleed tickets when they own less than half of the objectives on the map. So essentially this game type just really embodies what Battlefield should be and how objectives should be played, so don't feel like you have to do this. This is just merely a recommendation of what I feel really shows what Battlefield should be and how it should be played. Now, Battlefield does have a certain learning curve associated with it, like any shooter, but I encourage you to just persevere, stick with it. Once you understand how the game works, you will start having a lot of fun. So guys, that just about wraps up today's beginner's guide to Battlefield 4. If you have liked this video, you can leave a like, and if you want to see more Battlefield 4 footage, subscribe to me. That is what I do. So I thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.